Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. This week I'm going to be taking a look at a very interesting theory. So this is the theory that the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs were actually written in Welsh. So this is a theory that's been around for a while, but in the last 1 or 2 years it's become a lot more popular, so I thought it would be worth addressing. Now, to be clear, this is not a theory that I agree with. I absolutely don't agree with this theory at all. So I thought it would be nice to make a video explaining why. Now, you may be thinking, well, obviously it couldn't work because Welsh has changed so much over the past 2,000 years or so, 3,000 years. Using modern Welsh just wouldn't work. It wouldn't make any sense why that would possibly work, since it's changed so much. I mean, what it was in the ancient Egyptian era would be very different to modern Welsh. So even if it was the language of the Egyptian hieroglyphs, you wouldn't be able to use modern Welsh to translate it. You could say all sorts of things along those sorts of lines, and I would. However, the problem, well, it depends on your point of view whether it's a problem or not, but the key issue is that the proponents of this theory say that Welsh can be used to correctly translate the 3 names on the Rosetta Stone. So that's Cleopatra, Ptolemy, and Alexander, and those names are, of course, how linguists were able to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs in the first place. So that translation on the Rosetta Stone, that's very important, because those 3 names are like 3 keys that demonstrate the correct translation of the Egyptian hieroglyphs. So those are the symbols which we can definitively say that means an L, for example, that means an O, that's a P, and so forth. So it's very important to establish to what degree this does actually work on the Rosetta Stone. So I thought, well, as long as that translation of the Rosetta Stone appears to work, then no other argument about how Welsh couldn't possibly work for ancient inscriptions from far beyond the time in which Welsh had the form it has now. None of those arguments can really do anything to overcome this theory, as long as that supposed translation of the Rosetta Stone still stands. So in this video, I'm going to explain the 3 principles that demonstrate why this Welsh translation appears to work. And to demonstrate these 3 principles, rather than just explaining them to you, I'm going to do it myself in Portuguese. So I'm going to translate exactly the same way that the proponents of this Welsh theory have done using Welsh. I'm going to translate, well, for now, just one of the names, Cleopatra, on the Rosetta Stone. And I will do it for the others as well. I'll put the other 2 in the description. I don't want the video to be excessively long though, so for the moment I'm only going to do it on video with Cleopatra, but the other 2 names will be in the description, not my translation of those, that is. So the way this works, supposedly, is you take the Welsh word for the symbol, like for example a lion, and then you take the first letter of that Welsh word, and then that's the letter that symbol represents. So it's quite simple, the way it works. So let's see how we can do this using Portuguese. So let's begin. First of all, with Cleopatra, you have the corner symbol. Now in Portuguese, corner is canto. So that's a K sound. It's actually the letter C, but it's a K sound. And then after that, you have a lion. In Portuguese, that's leão. So that's an L, correctly. Then the next symbol, it's a little bit difficult to see what it is, but it's recognised as being a type of vegetation. So one word for vegetation, or greenery, in Portuguese is estufa. So that begins with an E. So there we have the E. Now, this next symbol, it's very difficult to see what this is. It could be understood as a few different things, but one possibility is that it's an olive, and that's how the proponents of the Welsh theory understand it to be. So the Portuguese word for olive is oliva, so that begins with an O. Or it might be a kind of hole that something is being put through, and that would fit orifício in Portuguese, which also begins with an O. Then the next symbol, it looks like a box. So one Portuguese word for box is pavilhão. So that begins with a P. There's a P, exactly as we need. But also it could be something else. I mean, the proponents of the Welsh theory say that it's a door, while the Portuguese word for door is porta. So again, there's the P that we need. Then we have an eagle, and the Portuguese word for eagle is águia. So there's our A. Then this next symbol, it's a hand, but it's not just a hand, it looks like it's being extended out as if it's giving something. So the word for give in Portuguese is dar. And the proponents of the Welsh theory say that this should actually be a D rather than a T. So it should be Cleopatra rather than Cleopatra. So let's go along with that. And therefore we can get a D from dar, just like the Welsh theorists have a D in the place of this symbol. Then the next one, which looks like some kind of opening or slot or something, and the word for slot, or one of the words for slot in Portuguese, is ranhura, so that begins with an R. So there we have the R, and then finally again we have the eagle, so that's águia. So there we go, we have Cleopadra, Cleopatra, exactly like the proponents of the Welsh theory. So how are we able to do this? How are we able to translate the Rosetta Stone name for Cleopatra using Portuguese? Does that mean Portuguese is the language of the Egyptian hieroglyphs? Well, no, it doesn't. The way this works is that there are three principles involved. So firstly, there are a few lucky coincidences. Like, for example, the word for lion is leão, and the word for eagle is águia. So that just works by coincidence. The second principle is the fact that there's usually more than one word for any given thing. So, for example, the word for corner, well, there are quite a few different words for corner in Portuguese. Canto is actually the first word that comes up if you look at it on Google Translate. But nonetheless, the point is that there are quite a few different words that you can choose. And so it's not too difficult to find a word that just so happens to have the right first letter. So then the third principle is kind of similar, but it's that you can interpret these symbols in basically whichever way you need to get the letter to work. So, for example, with the hand, I didn't use the Portuguese word for hand, which is mão, so that begins with an M. I use the word for give, because you could argue, well, it kind of looks like it's giving something. So the word for give is dar, so that begins with a D. So in that way, you can kind of manipulate it to work. So this is what happened with, well, these three principles are used with the Welsh theory. So, for example, if you look at the interpretation they've got, some of them work by coincidence, some of them work because there are multiple words that you could choose, multiple possible translations for a particular thing. But also the third principle, as in interpreting the symbol to be something that it's not. An example of that is the eagle. The word for eagle is not what they have there. That's actually the word for bird. So it's a similar idea. So it's kind of like you could argue, well, that works, but it's not actually the exact word that it should be. And then you've got a similar thing with the hand. Well, they've interpreted that as a fist. It's clearly not a fist. It's an open hand. There's no way that that's a fist. But they've translated it as a fist so that they can get the D, which they need, because another word wouldn't work. They wouldn't be able to get the right first letter. So just like how I managed to translate it using Portuguese, using those three principles, that's how this Welsh translation works. There are a few lucky coincidences. You can choose the right word, the word that you need, because there's usually more than one translation for a particular noun or concept. So you can choose the one that starts with the right letter. And you can interpret the symbols in whichever way you need to get the translation to work. So using those three principles, you can translate it using Welsh, and you can also translate it using Portuguese. It's meaningless. It's a meaningless translation. So that is hopefully a good explanation for why I think this Welsh translation is not valid in any way at all. And like I said, I'll put the translation of the other two names, Alexander and Ptolemy, in the description, using the same methods into Portuguese.